Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Hipsters podcast, where I interview founders and co founders, entrepreneurs and artists, executives and stay at home hipsters in crypto and blockchain around the world. And I have an amazing podcast for you today. Let's get to it. And today I'm very excited to announce my guest, Matthijs de Vries. He is the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of AllianceBlock. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you today. First question to kick things off is what is your background and how does it relate to what you're doing now at AllianceBlock?
Yeah, so when I reached the age of around 11, I started to tinker with things like Visual Basic on Windows computers. And I quickly got hooked on creating applications that did all sorts of things and quickly got acquainted with HTML as well. When I turned around 15, I started developing software and websites professionally already. And at age 19, I started my own business selling customized desktop computers to local entrepreneurs, while at the same time, I was leading the development of a full-blown workflow management suite and analytical algorithm in the field of veterinary diagnostics. And I was always trying out new technologies, especially exotic niche technologies. And when developers around me found a certain technology particularly challenging, it would motivate me even more to dive deeper into it and master it eventually. So, although I grew into a managerial role at a large enterprise in the meantime, I always kept thirsty for exciting new technologies. And this eventually brought me to the field of AI. And where in this field of AI, I almost immediately got hooked and introduced to blockchain. And this became this became quite an addiction to learn more and more, because the field seemed so simple as at first. You had Bitcoin and Ethereum in the media, and everybody knew more or less what they did. But it became so much more than that if you just read into it a little bit more, and the opportunities seemed almost endless. So we quickly became part of the communities, first simply as an investor, but later also as a contributor, by helping others building dashboards, prediction tools, and other community-oriented tools. And during this time, I also quickly learned that there is a lot to improve in the industry, which became even more clear during the ICO boom in 2017. So in 2018, I met one of my co-founders, the CEO of AllianceBlock, Rashid Ajaja, in a Telegram group. And together we quickly learned that we are completely in line with what's currently or back then happening in the blockchain industry, and what definitely needs to be improved. And that day, AllianceBlock basically came to life. And currently at AllianceBlock, I'm able to constantly feed that hunger for working with cutting-edge technologies on a daily basis, while surrounding myself with the people that are having that exact same hunger, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
Great. So one of the projects that I see a lot of fellow Link enthusiasts, I'm one of them, talk about on Twitter is AllianceBlock. And it's one of the projects that I haven't quite gotten my hands around. So I'm happy to talk to you today and learn more. First question I have is, what is AllianceBlock, and how are you building your company for the future at this time?
Yeah, sure. So at the heart of AllianceBlock is our vision to connect traditional finance markets, or TradFi, with decentralized and digital asset markets, or DeFi, bringing new financial opportunities to both worlds and building the foundation for the next generation of investment banking. So we have decided to divide our blockchain agnostic layer 2 protocol into multiple modules. And each module is capable of being a standalone product, generating its own revenue and with its own targeted market niche. However, each module fully interconnects with the rest of the ecosystem in order to create the world's first globally compliant and decentralized capital market, which will provide the first fully audited and regulatory compliant gateway for retail, institutional, and professional investors alike. So we've defined the following 7 modules: the cross-border regulatory compliance rule engine, compliant peer-to-peer and NFT lending, borrow, and investment protocol, which was recently announced as the AllianceBlock funded product, an on-chain investment data API, the DeFi investment terminal, the derivative and structured product pricing engine and risk analytics, trustless KYC, AML, and identity verification, and of course, the recently announced data tunnel, of which the MVP version was released very recently. So we have quite a big office in Utrecht, in the Netherlands, where our developer teams, including me, is situated. However, we are spread out throughout all of Europe, team members in Poland, France, Switzerland, etc. So we communicate well through Slack, daily calls, working agile through Scrum boards. But you know, when you're working on decentralized products, it's easy to work in a decentralized manner.
Great. And I saw today you have an announcement regarding the data tunnel with Ava Labs. And so that goes into one. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So the data tunnel was released, the MVP version of the data tunnel was released this morning, and it's a very important milestone for bridging DeFi with TradFi. And the data tunnel, it's now released on the Ethereum network, leveraging the technology of one of our partners, Ocean Protocol. And the data tunnel is eventually meant to be as much chain agnostics as possible. So other blockchain projects or other blockchain networks will be supported in upcoming releases. And we are ultimately, right now, it's a data tunnel that helps decentralized access to large sets of data in any kind of format, in a predictable output format that is easy to integrate with software systems. But ultimately, we are working towards a solution that we call the so-called Oracle of Oracles, that will aggregate data from, for example, Chainlink, API tree equivalent, DIA, Parsec, and will be able to feed this to smart contracts and enhance this data even more and feed it back to the Oracle providers itself again, creating basically a loop of data which is continuously enhanced and traced.
Excellent. I want to thank you for explaining this to me, because of what I understand is I have been traditionally investing in protocols or in specific infrastructures, and what you're building seems to me to be an entire ecosystem. Is that right?
True. That's completely correct. Yeah, it's fundamental actually to what we are doing in order to bridge decentralized finance with traditional finance. So when we talk about the technology that we use as a solution to create this bridge, we are talking about the protocol that is consisting out of 3 layers. It's a layer 2 blockchain agnostic solution. But just this technology alone, created by AllianceBlock, used by AllianceBlock, will not bridge DeFi with TradFi. It will need a solid foundation of partnerships in order to provide their services on this protocol to each other, from both traditional and decentralized industries, in order to make this bridge a success. Because ultimately, we are bridging a complete industry with another industry, and we are not bridging one industry with AllianceBlock. So the ecosystem of partnerships that we create is extremely important to achieve these goals.
So let's talk about that bridge a little bit further and dive a little bit deeper into DeFi. You said it's a bridge between traditional finance and decentralized finance through the creation of the first compliant capital market. So what makes that market compliant?
Yeah, so one of the biggest problems that currently hinder institutional money to come to the decentralized world or hinder investment in security tokens is compliance with regulations. But most importantly, blockchain-based implementations offer no recourse or dispute mechanisms. Now, imagine, for example, a regulatory and compliance layer that is plugged into the central security depository or the CSD. And when you, for example, have a share sitting on that CSD, you create a token. See it as a derivative of those shares. So this token can then be traded in a decentralized market. And at each transfer, it will communicate with that CSD. As a result, each trade will be compliant. But the cross-border regulatory checks are done pre-trade. Like this, institutional deals with the security as they always do, but there is now this extra layer that benefits from blockchain. And this is just one step to bridge those two worlds, traditional finance and decentralized finance. And it's part of the core solution that we are proposing. So there are many projects out there that are currently offering so-called bridge between DeFi and TradFi. But they then only continue to focus on either improving liquidity or improving interoperability. And these are definitely issues that need to be resolved or addressed in order to bridge DeFi with TradFi, but will definitely not be enough in order to realize true bridge between the two. And in order to be successful in this ambition, you also need to look into regulations, data provision, identity verifications, etc. And this is why a protocol is so needed. It doesn't just focus on one thing, focus on all those issues that currently hinder and plague TradFi entry into DeFi.
So I got it. I get it. I'm excited. I didn't understand how I'm beginning to see this picture. And I know in order to have what you're building works, you need, critical and important partnerships all around. So how have you forged those partnerships and how do they benefit, working with your organization?
Yeah, so in the past half year, we have definitely worked really hard on building solid partnerships. And as I said before, we like to call this network of partnership of AllianceBlock the AllianceBlock ecosystem, as it's fundamental to reach our goals, right? And each partner is a very meaningful addition to the ecosystem in our protocol. So, for example, Chainlink, API Tree, Covalent, Ocean, Dia, and Parsec, they are all hugely important for the data tunnel in order to eventually become the so-called Oracle of Oracles. But other strong partnerships that are worth mentioning, of course, are Quant, Orion, Rampify, Bridge Mutual, and of course, today's announcement of Avalanche Labs. Of course, being part of the London Stock Exchange Group's partner platform comes also with a really wide array of new possibilities that in itself is already a huge milestone in bridging decentralized finance with traditional finance. And how are we able to forge those partnerships with all these really strong projects is because they see this need to bridge decentralized finance with traditional finance. And they also see that this cannot be done by one entity alone.
Okay, shifting gears. So let's shift the gears a minute. One of the things that interests me about you is that you have a background in veterinary diagnostics, right? You said that. With COVID-19 affecting the world, is still running rampant through some European countries right now. One of the areas that veterinary diagnostics touches is precision medicine. What lessons could you take from examining, breakthroughs in precision medicine that could, lessons that you could take in AllianceBlock moving forward and applying that to creating a global decentralized society?
Actually, this is super interesting that you brought this up specifically. And looking back at my work creating software and algorithms in the veterinary diagnostics field, there are a few quite huge takeaways and problems that are still very relevant today. And this still partially drive me to what I'm doing to this day. So take the field of veterinary diagnostics or any diagnostics in general. It first needs to be funded largely in order to go through many years of R&D with risks of leading nowhere. And then when the R&D leads to something, a product needs to be developed from the research that doesn't only produce consistent and predictable output, but can also be easily reproduced. And then facing fierce competition or pressure from current events, now like COVID-19, but back then, things like mad cow disease and foot-and-mouth disease, things that I was working on, you have to work on continuously improving your product, make it produce less waste, be more accurate, have a quicker time to produce the results. The same dynamic is valid for the tech industry, basically, especially for tech startups working on cutting-edge technology innovations, for example, in the blockchain industry. And for the blockchain industry, specifically in bull markets, we see many projects easily raising funds without almost any accountability. In a bear market, serious projects that are open to be held accountable completely have almost no way to raise funds, have a much higher probability to fail, even though they have a much better team, much better fundamentals than projects that have raised large sums of money in better times. And unfortunately, it's that widespread lack of accountability that is contributing to the start of bear markets in the first place. And that's why we believe milestone-based financing as one of the pillars going forward, for example, in the AllianceBlock funded product, will be an important part of the AllianceBlock ecosystem. And another very important thing is data, actually. So when I was leading the development of the veterinary diagnostic software, data was essential to determine the success of the diagnostic product and the software itself. Having the right data was crucial for the European Union approvals, feeding data warehouses to keep archives of each run, and of course, for the detection of a positive result during the run itself. But yeah, all data can be eventually tampered with. So a centralized anti-tampering mechanism was added to combat this back then. Today, data plays an even larger role in our lives. It's not only everywhere around us, produced by the news, social media, and even by our friends to get us to form opinions about current events. And take definitely COVID-19 in this example. There have been many cases of false data going around to social media that try to push people in an either pro or against stance with regards to the virus. And this is exactly why the AllianceBlock data tunnel, that was of which the MVP version was released this morning, is so extremely important, because our data tunnel allows to hold the verifiable, truthful source of the data, track all access to this data, provide the consumer of this data to see the potential evolution of the data, for example.
Great. You said a key word there, and the key word you said there was accountability. And
yeah.
You know, let's talk about the elephant in the room in the bull market. And that is this concept of blockchain ethics. What are some of the benefits and some of the dangers of combining artificial and human intelligence and accountability to obtain, and I read this in your documentation, the wisdom of the crowd, in building ethical infrastructures and accountable ecosystems?
Yeah, so I think an easy example would be to talk about DAOs, the decentralized autonomous organizations. So nowadays, huge leaps forwards have been made with so-called DAOs, because DAO allows organizations to be controlled by the crowd, so to speak, by introducing intricate voting and reward mechanisms, right? But some problems with DAOs that we are currently working on at AllianceBlock is that there is no straightforward way to ensure unique and verified identities of the DAO's participants without compromising anonymity of those participants. So we see a huge need for our trustless identity verifications in order to make sure participants of DAOs, but also, for example, IDOs and traders of decentralized exchanges, are not on any sanction lists, are from whitelisted jurisdictions, and are who they say they are, without needing to share this information with any of the participants involved in this ecosystem. Another thing that we are addressing is the implementation of something like a reputation score, where participants of DAO-like structures are constantly rated based on how and what they exactly contribute to the ecosystem. And this ultimately creates a more fair and weighted mechanism.
Awesome. So, examining, you said, create a fair ecosystem, examining the global landscape right now, looking at that crowd, and mostly a lot of people have been displaced with traditional, structures, somewhat, depending where you are, ravaged. There's now a need more than ever for entrepreneurs to step up and build. How can entrepreneurs in technology or innovation now compete or partner with large traditional companies, right, to build a better decentralized future?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Fortunately, there are already a lot of entrepreneurs adequately competing with large traditional companies. And what we see happening often that contributes to the success of those companies is not to try to disrupt an entire market or even a whole process, but just a part of it. So focus on one thing insanely well, do it better than anybody else, and large traditional companies eventually have to follow suit. Secondly, it's important to accept that you will not be able to do it alone. Like with our ecosystem, seeking and building strong alliances is fundamental. Even between large traditional organizations and startups, a lot of magic can happen, which is more and more embraced by large enterprises. Fortunately, you can see this back in spin-offs being created that were incubated in-house of large enterprises. These are not the exception anymore, and definitely contribute to a better future in this respect. And between decentralized and centralized world, there is still a huge gap in order for both worlds to work together efficiently. And this is why a compliant bridge between the two is so important. It allows entrepreneurs, small startups, to interact with large traditional organizations by basically giving them a head start on all those difficult and expensive stuff to implement their process technologies more easily and cheaper, so that they have a quicker time to market, which allows them to more easily compete with these larger traditional organizations.
Well, you said it there. There is a gap, right? There's a gap today between the two, and I understand that building a compliant decentralized marketplace, what you're building, doesn't really happen overnight. It's a process and a journey. I think those who will be benefiting the most probably are our children. And so what do you think the skills that our children need to start learning now so that decentralized future they can live into and be successful and live into abundance?
Yeah, I completely agree. Myself, I'm a huge proponent of giving children access to technology-related education, especially in the field of software development, and as an early age as possible. Virtually every career path has, or at least in a very near future, will have large dependence on technology. And technology today is so much more than an isolated career path. It is driving virtually all innovation, and it will accelerate all future scientific discoveries at a rate we have never, ever experienced before. And teaching software development to children at a really young age doesn't mean those children will need to eventually become software developers, but they will definitely have an easier time and all the right tools to being part of that future disruptions that are all yet to come.
So what kind of skills do you think they'll need? Artificial intelligence or smart cities, or what technology skills specifically do you think that will benefit them?
It's just any software development skills. It will ultimately contribute to any field of interest that the children will eventually develop on their own through school, high school, university studies, specializing in a specific kind of field, while having a generic background in software development, whether it's through smart contract development, whether it's through website development. They will have this unique skill set that will help them think just a little bit differently than other people that will allow them to be part of that solution for future disruptions, instead of be the one onlooker standing on the side, only witnessing everything happening around them changing.
I couldn't agree more. I have a liberal arts degree undergrad, and I rely on that all the time. Even though they say you can't get a job in liberal arts, it's important for the way of thinking and the computer skill. What do you think that's going to be the core skill that kids are going to need?
Exactly this. Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to thank you very much for your time. So I have one more question. It's been a privilege. Yeah, it's been a privilege and an honor to interview you today.
I really love your questions, man. They're amazing.
Thank you. So my last question is this: is very simple. How can people find out more information about you and AllianceBlock, and how can they contact you?
So we are completely transparent about our team, our contact details, including phone number, LinkedIn profiles on our website. It's to be found on AllianceBlock.io. If you want to have a chat with the team or our community, I happily invite you to our Telegram channel. I can't wait to meet you there, to be honest.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time today.